Hello and welcome to another video. In this video I'm going to restore or try to restore these three Galaxy A3 2017 smartphones, and then I'm going to try how do they perform today in 2021. I had two phones with already broken back covers, so I didn't need to worry about breaking them. It was surprisingly difficult to lift the back covers up. There was quite a lot of very strong glue. After the back cover was off, though, it was quite easy to complete the disassembly from that point on. It's the usual small screws and these plastic protector plates that you have to lift off to reveal the main board. After that's done, it's just about lifting up these flex connectors, and unlike I did, it would probably be wisest to take the battery connector out first. While you don't have to take the board off at all, I did it to save the cameras from any fingerprints. Also, it would probably be better to take the battery out before changing the screen, but the batteries are glued and I don't have a very good record on taking glued batteries off without damaging them. The removal process of the old screen needs a lot of heat, like the back glass, and I found out it's easiest to start from the front camera hole. It would be best to do this slowly and carefully, and be careful not to break the screen further, since you have to take these smaller glass bits off one by one, but I found that pretty hard to do with this one, since the glue was very hard despite heating the phone. Once you get the top and bottom parts of the screen to lift off from the frame, it's usually quite easy to get the sides detached, but there is always two parts of the screen, the upper glass or digitizer and the LCD or AMOLED itself under the glass. And on this phone, the AMOLED display itself is glued very strongly to the phone frame. Also, this glass that I'm detaching here is original, so it is AMOLED screen, and the one I'm replacing it with will be LCD. It will be a very cheap display from AliExpress, so it'll be interesting to see the quality of that replacement part. At under 15 euros, I'll be happy if it even works though. The edges of the frame will always be covered in glue and other gunk, so it's always best to remove that, otherwise the new screen might not sit perfectly on the frame. When I was trying to test the screen and fit the logic board back on to test it, it wouldn't fit, and the reason was that the SIM card tray release mechanism was in the wrong position and prevented the board from fitting properly. After plugging the ribbon cables back, I tried to boot the phone to test the screen, but it wouldn't boot, and turns out it needs the black plastic part which has the wireless charging, the connection to the power button and the logic part goes through that part, so otherwise it won't power up, and as usual sometimes you have to take the screen flex cable out and try plugging it again. After I got the phone powered up properly, I tested this touchscreen from everywhere, and touchscreen seemed to work. Also the brightness seemed to work, which is good, especially for that price, since some Samsung replacement screens, especially cheap ones that aren't AMOLED but instead LCD like this one, some of them cannot change the brightness, but this one can. For attaching the screen to the frame, the screen comes with some double-sided adhesive stripes, but those never quite work in my experience. At least they won't hold the screen on the frame for long. So I've turned to always using glue instead. This screen especially seems a bit thicker than the original, and thus it doesn't sit completely flush with the frame, and that's quite bad. I don't see how it could ever stay on with any adhesive stripes. After attaching this new screen, I quickly tested that it still worked now that the glue isn't yet dried, and it seemed to work, so I put some rubber bands to hold the screen on the frame and left it to dry for 2 days. After 2 days had passed and the phone still seemed to work, luckily, I just assembled the phone properly so that I could install the new back glass that I also ordered, since the old one was smashed and the smashed back glasses tend to shatter completely when they are taken off the phone. After putting in all the plastic covers and screwing them on the phone, it was time to do the glue removal and gunk removal from the edges of the phone before the back glass can be glued on. After getting all the gunk off the edges, it was time to fit the new back glass on, but the new back glass didn't come with a camera lens, so I needed to transfer that over from the old back glass, and the camera lens is just glued on, so it will detach easily with a prying tool. And after gluing the camera lens to the back cover, I tried the back cover on the phone and tested both the front and back camera lenses, since this is the last time you can try to clean them if there's any gunk visible on the camera. After testing both the cameras successfully and applying some glue, I put on the new back glass and tested the cameras again just to be sure no glue got between there, and then I let it also dry for 2 days with rubber bands holding it in correct position. After that I had to peel a black sticker from the Samsung logo. As I understand, they cover the logos up to prevent any problems with the customs, thinking that they are counterfeit products or something. And after that I tried a touchscreen tester. On the other phones the touchscreen worked perfectly, but on this one phone there's one corner that doesn't have any touch. Things like these can be expected of these very cheap replacement screens, and this particular problem prevented the keyboard from working properly, and as a kinda sketchy workaround I just resized the keyboard with a Bluetooth mouse, which can be done with Samsung keyboard, luckily. One thing I would always recommend doing when using a LCD replacement screen on a phone which originally had an AMOLED or OLED screen is to disable always on display, since it would eat way too much battery with an LCD. This phone seems to software-wise be stuck with Android 8.0 Oreo, and this probably isn't a problem yet, but will maybe become at some point. Depends on what apps you use. I think it will be fine through 2021 though. Here you can see some of the backlight bleed through the gap which exists because the replacement screen is thicker than the original. Probably the best way to test the phone's performance in 2021 is to test some 2021 mobile games. So I have PUBG Mobile here, and I think it's running with low graphical settings. Since PUBG on desktop is not the easiest game to run, I expected that this older phone wouldn't be able to handle PUBG Mobile, but this PUBG Mobile seems to be much better optimized than the PC version of the game, and it is very responsive and very playable. As it tends to be with mobile FPS shooter games, the difficult thing is more the controls than the opposing players. But even with this relatively small screen, it was enjoyable to play, so I consider PUBG Mobile to be playable on a Galaxy A3 2017 in 2021. Next I tested Call of Duty Mobile with low settings, and the verdict with this game is pretty much the same as with PUBG Mobile. It works well enough to play it enjoyably, and I just need some practice with the controls, but otherwise it seems to run pretty well. So this one phone's restoration was successful, except the one corner on the touchscreen that doesn't have touch. About the other two ones, one of them worked perfectly, with the touchscreen even working perfectly, but the third phone had some bigger problems. It had some possible liquid damage which I am trying to clean here, but I noticed that some components from the board were already missing. The phone ended up working for a day, but then it stopped powering on completely, so the damage has probably been done for that device. So that is 2 out of 3 devices restored this time.